Our world is full of surprising events. Some stories are so shocking that we might not believe them at first. But they are real. They happen to people like you and me. Today's story is one of those. It is painful. It is emotional. But it must be told. This is the story of a young boy named Daniel and his grandmother, Mama Grace. Daniel was a smart, kind-hearted boy. He was just 13 years old. He lived in a small town in Nigeria with his loving parents and his grandmother. Mama Grace was his father's mother. She was about 68 years old and was respected in the community. Everyone called her Mama Grace because of her soft voice, slow steps, and the white scarf she always wore. Daniel was the only child of his parents. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, loved him deeply. They were not rich, but they worked hard to give him the best life. Daniel had his own room. He went to a good school. He ate healthy meals every day. And most importantly, he grew up in a house filled with love and laughter. At least, that's what everyone thought. From the time Daniel was a baby, Mama Grace had been there. When his parents went to work, Mama Grace would watch him. She bathed him, fed him, and even sang to him. She told him bedtime stories about the moon, animals in the forest, and angels who watched good boys. "Grandma," Daniel used to say with his eyes wide, "tell me the one about the boy who spoke to birds again." Mama Grace would smile, lean back in her rocking chair, and begin the tale. Long, long ago. That was the kind of bond they had. It felt pure, safe, untouchable. But not everything that feels good is good. One Monday morning, Daniel woke up earlier than usual. He had an important test at school. It was the first exam of the term, and he had studied hard the night before. "Mom," he called while brushing his teeth, "I need to leave early today." His mother was in the kitchen, cutting vegetables and singing softly. She poked her head out of the kitchen door. "Why so early, Danny?" "I've got a test today," he said, rinsing his mouth. "It starts at 8. I want to revise a bit with my friends." "Okay," she said, returning to her onions. "Just give me 5 minutes. I'll pack your lunch and drop you off on my way to the store." But Daniel quickly replied, "Mom, don't worry. Just pack it, and I'll go by myself." She paused. "You sure?" "Yes, Mom, I'm not a baby," he said with a cheeky grin. She laughed. "All right, my little professor." Daniel grabbed his backpack and stood at the door, tying his shoelaces. Mama Grace was sitting on the front veranda, peeling oranges into a blue bowl. She looked up and said, "Daniel, are you going already?" "Yes, Grandma. I don't want to be late." She stood up slowly, placing her orange bowl aside. "Wait, let me walk with you. There are strange people out there. You never know." Daniel didn't argue. He respected his grandma. "Okay." They walked side by side along the narrow street leading to the main road. It was a peaceful area with trees on both sides. The birds were chirping, and the morning sun had started to warm the dusty red ground. "Are you ready for your test?" Mama Grace asked. "Yes, Grandma. I studied everything." "Good boy. Education is power. Don't ever play with it." Daniel smiled. "I want to be a doctor one day." "That's my boy," she said, patting his shoulder gently. "You'll be a great doctor." They continued walking for a while, talking about school, his friends, and his dream of working in a big hospital in Abuja or even London. But then, something strange happened. Just a few steps from the main road, where they would usually turn right toward the school, Mama Grace stopped. Daniel looked up. "Why are we stopping here?" Mama Grace looked around. They were standing near a small pathway between two quiet buildings. No one else was around. "I need to tell you something," she said. Let's sit down over there. It's important. Daniel was confused. Grandma, can't we talk after school? I'm going to be late. No, she said softly but firmly. Just 5 minutes. She pointed to a bench near the wall. It was shaded by a large mango tree. Daniel didn't want to argue. He followed her and sat down. Mama Grace looked at him for a moment. Her eyes were tired, but there was something different in them today. Something that didn't feel like the warm grandma he knew. Daniel, she began, you're growing up now. You're not a small boy anymore. He nodded, unsure what to say. There are things I've wanted to talk to you about, she continued. Things you won't learn in school. Daniel tilted his head. Like what? Mama Grace placed her hand on his knee. Like how special you are. How close we are. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Grandma, can we talk about this later? I really need to go now. Mama Grace held his hand tighter. You don't trust me? I do, Grandma, but I'll miss my test. Tests will come and go, but this talk, it's important. Daniel looked into her eyes. They didn't look gentle anymore. They looked strange. He pulled his hand away. Grandma, please, I need to go. There was a long silence. Then Mama Grace said something that Daniel would never forget. You know, you're becoming very handsome, Daniel. You remind me of your grandfather when he was young. Daniel stood up. Grandma, I really don't understand what you're saying. Mama Grace stood too. Don't tell anyone we sat here, okay? It's our secret. Daniel didn't reply. He picked up his bag and started walking faster. Daniel, she called behind him. He didn't turn back. That night Daniel couldn't sleep. He kept hearing her voice in his head. Don't tell anyone. It's our secret. He tossed and turned in bed. His mind was confused. That was his grandma, the woman who had raised him, the woman who had sung him lullabies. Why was she acting so strange now? The next morning, his mother noticed the look on his face. Are you okay, Danny? You look pale. I'm fine, he said quickly. But he wasn't fine. Something had changed, something he couldn't explain. And deep inside, he was afraid. Part 2. Why is Grandma acting this way? Daniel sat at his school desk the next day, but his mind wasn't in class. His friends were laughing and playing during break, but Daniel just stared at his locker. He kept thinking about what Mama Grace had said near the mango tree. You're becoming very handsome. Don't tell anyone we sat here. It's our secret. That didn't feel like normal grandmother talk. Something about it made him feel weird inside, uncomfortable, scared. Why would Grandma say that? He kept asking himself. Why would she look at me like that? That afternoon, when school ended, Daniel walked home slowly. His feet felt heavy. His thoughts were loud. He didn't want to go home. He didn't want to see Mama Grace. When he reached the front gate, he peeked through the side before opening it. He saw his mom in the garden, watering the plants. That made him feel a little better. She looked peaceful, humming as she worked. But he didn't see Mama Grace anywhere. Daniel opened the gate and walked in quietly. Welcome, my dear doctor, his mom said playfully, seeing him walk in. How was the test? It was okay, Daniel said softly. You don't sound okay, she said, wiping her hands with her apron. Come tell me, what's going on? Daniel shook his head. I'm just tired. She didn't push further. All right, go wash your hands. Food is almost ready. Daniel walked into the house. It was quiet inside, no radio playing, no sound of Mama Grace's slippers sliding across the floor, just silence. He went straight to his room, locked the door, and sat on his bed. Later that evening, Daniel was doing his homework when he heard the sound of slow footsteps. Slippers. He froze. He knew those steps. A soft knock came on the door. "Daniel?" Mama Grace's voice came. He didn't answer. She knocked again. "Are you doing your homework?" Still no reply. Then she slowly opened the door and stepped in. Daniel didn't look at her. He stared at his book, pretending to write something. Mama Grace walked closer and sat on the edge of his bed. "Why are you not answering me?" she asked softly. Daniel's hand shook a little as he wrote. "I'm studying." "I see," she said. "Are you upset with me?" He stayed silent. She leaned forward. "Daniel, you know I love you, right? You're my favorite person in this house." Daniel finally looked at her, and his voice came out weak. "Grandma, can you please leave? I need to focus." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Of course. We'll talk later." She stood up and walked out, but before closing the door, she said, "And remember, our little talks stay between us." Click. The door shut behind her. Daniel dropped his pen and put his hands over his face. His chest felt tight. The next day at school, Daniel sat alone during lunch. His best friend Toby came over. "Bro, what's wrong with you?" Toby asked, frowning. "You didn't laugh at my joke today. Are you sick?" Daniel gave a small smile. "Just tired." Toby sat down beside him. "You know you can talk to me, right?" Daniel looked at him. "Even about weird stuff?" "Yes, even about weird stuff," Toby replied. "Is it about a girl?" Daniel shook his head. "Is it family?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Your parents?" Toby asked. "No," Daniel said in a whisper. "My grandma." Toby looked confused. "Mama Grace, but she's so kind." Daniel paused. "She's not acting the same." Toby leaned closer. "What do you mean?" Daniel hesitated, but he felt like he would explode if he didn't talk. "Yesterday she said weird things, like I'm handsome, like I remind her of Grandpa, and she told me to keep secrets." Toby looked shocked. "Wait, that doesn't sound right." "I know," Daniel said. "It's confusing." Toby put his arm on Daniel's shoulder. "Listen to me. Sometimes people, even family, do wrong things. You have to protect yourself." "But she's my grandma," Daniel said, nearly in tears. "She raised me." "That doesn't mean she can treat you in any way she likes," Toby said seriously. "You need to tell someone." Daniel wiped his eyes quickly. "Who?" "Your mom, or a teacher, or my dad. He's a counselor. He helps kids like us with stuff like this." "I'm scared." "I know. But keeping it inside won't make it go away." That evening, Daniel sat at the dinner table with his parents. Mama Grace wasn't there. She had gone to her church meeting. For the first time in 2 days, Daniel felt like he could breathe. His mom served him a big spoon of jollof rice. "Your favorite." Daniel smiled weakly. "Thanks, Mom." His dad looked up from his food. "What's been bothering you, son? You look like you've seen a ghost since yesterday." Daniel paused. His fingers squeezed his spoon tightly. His mother noticed. "Danny?" she said softly. Daniel looked at both of them. "I need to tell you something, about Grandma." He told them everything, every word, from the walk to school to the bench under the mango tree, the strange words, the way she held his hand, her voice in the doorway, the knock on his room, the secrets. As he spoke, his mother's face slowly lost color. His father put down his spoon. There was silence for a while. Then his mother stood up from the table and walked over to him. She held his face gently. "Why didn't you tell us earlier?" "I didn't know how," Daniel whispered. "I thought you wouldn't believe me." His dad stood too. His voice was calm but firm. Daniel, thank you for telling us. What you did was brave. His mom looked at her husband. What do we do now? He replied, we protect our son first. Then we handle Mama Grace. Later that night, Daniel couldn't sleep again, but this time, not from fear, from relief. He had told the truth, and his parents had believed him. The next morning, Mama Grace came home from her meeting. She greeted everyone as if nothing had happened. But this time, Daniel didn't smile back. His mother didn't reply. His father simply said, Mama, we need to talk. And for the first time, Mama Grace looked unsure. Part 3. A house divided. The family must choose what's right. Mama Grace stood still in the living room doorway, her white scarf half folded on her shoulder, her brown handbag hanging loosely on one arm. She looked from Daniel to his mother, then to her son, Daniel's father. Her lips formed a small smile, but her eyes searched nervously. You said, we need to talk? She asked slowly, trying to sound calm. Mr. Johnson stood tall, arms crossed. His eyes didn't blink. Yes, Mama, sit down. Daniel sat beside his mother on the couch, holding her hand tightly. He could feel her fingers were cold. Mama Grace slowly stepped in and sat on the single chair across from them. What's going on? She asked, still trying to sound like nothing was wrong. Mrs. Johnson cleared her throat. We know what happened. Daniel told us everything. There was silence. Heavy, long silence. Mama Grace's face changed. She blinked quickly. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. I don't understand, she said. You do, Mr. Johnson said firmly. You know exactly what we're talking about. Mama Grace looked at Daniel. For the first time ever, her face was not soft. It was angry. Not loudly angry, but the quiet kind that made Daniel's heart beat faster. Daniel, she said slowly, why would you lie about me? Me? I didn't lie, Daniel replied. His voice was shaking, but he didn't look away. You made me feel scared. You said strange things. You touched me in ways that didn't feel right. I never hurt you, she said quickly. How can you say this about your own grandmother? You said not to tell anyone, Daniel said. You told me it was our secret. If it wasn't wrong, why did you say that? Mrs. Johnson stood up. Enough, Mama. My son is not lying. I have raised him to be honest, respectful, and brave, and he had the courage to speak up. Mama Grace leaned back in the chair. She looked at Mr. Johnson. You believe this? I do, he said without blinking. She dropped her bag on the floor. So you believe a child over your own mother? I carried you in my womb. I raised you. And I thank you for that, Mr. Johnson said quietly. But what you did to my son is not something I can ignore. Mama Grace stood up suddenly. You're going to throw me out, aren't you? That's what this is about. Mrs. Johnson walked closer to her. This is not about revenge or punishment. This is about protecting our son. That's our job now. Later that evening, the air in the house was heavy. Daniel sat quietly in his room. He could hear muffled voices from the living room. His parents were talking, again. Should we call the police? His mother asked. Mr. Johnson sighed. I want to. But Mama is old. People in the community won't understand. They'll blame Daniel. So we let her go? She asked. No, he said. But we need to act wisely. We protect our child first. Then we take steps. I don't want her around him anymore. Ever, she said. She's leaving. Tomorrow morning. Daniel leaned back on his pillow. He felt like a weight had been lifted, but it was still too heavy to carry alone. The next morning, Mama Grace was packing her things. Her hands moved slowly. She didn't say a word. Her scarf wasn't tied. Her slippers made no sound. It was like she wasn't even there. Mr. Johnson stood at the door. "You will stay with Uncle Jide for now. I've spoken to him. He's expecting you." Mama Grace looked up. "So you're choosing your wife and child over me?" "I'm choosing what is right," he replied. She didn't argue. She zipped up her old suitcase, stood up, and walked past him without saying goodbye. As she left, Daniel watched through his bedroom window. He didn't feel happy. He didn't feel angry. He felt strange. His grandmother, the woman who had once told him bedtime stories and wiped his tears, was now walking away like a stranger. 2 days later, Daniel and his parents sat down with Toby's father, Mr. Bayo, who was a counselor at a nearby school. Mr. Bayo listened carefully. He didn't interrupt once. When they finished, he nodded slowly and said, "Daniel, I'm proud of you. What you did, telling your parents, was the most important step. Many children are not that brave." Daniel looked down. "But I still feel bad." "That's normal," Mr. Bayo said. "But I want you to understand something. It's not your fault. Grown-ups are supposed to protect children. When they don't, it is never the child's fault." Mr. and Mrs. Johnson held Daniel's hands on both sides. Mr. Bayo continued, "This is also not something to hide in shame. There's power in telling the truth. We can help others when we speak up." He turned to the parents. "Have you thought about therapy?" "We have," Mrs. Johnson said, "but we don't know where to go." "I'll recommend someone," Mr. Bayo said. "Daniel will need support, not just now, but as he grows. And both of you will also need healing. You've all gone through a trauma." Mr. Johnson nodded. "Thank you. We want to do this the right way." Back at school, things were starting to feel better. Daniel smiled again. He played during break. Toby stayed close to him and watched out for him like a brother. One afternoon, their teacher made an announcement. "Next week, we are going on a school picnic. Everyone must wear school uniforms and come early." Daniel's eyes lit up. A picnic. He needed something fun, something to remind him that life could still be sweet. Toby leaned in. "We'll sit on the same mat. I'll bring Chin Chin." Daniel laughed. "Only if I get the bigger share." "Deal." That weekend, as they prepared for the picnic, Mrs. Johnson called Daniel aside. "Danny," she said, kneeling in front of him, "I want you to know we're proud of you, and we'll always protect you, no matter what." Daniel hugged her tightly. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, and I promise, this house will always be safe for you." That night, Daniel slept peacefully. No nightmares, no fear, just calm. For the first time in days, he dreamed of becoming a doctor again. Part 4. Facing the community. Can the truth stay hidden forever? Days passed, and life in the Johnson house was slowly returning to normal. Mama Grace was gone. Daniel could now sit at the dining table without fear. He could do his homework without checking if someone was watching. He could sleep through the night without waking up in cold sweats. But even though things seemed calm, deep inside, Daniel knew that what happened had changed his world forever. One afternoon, as he walked back from school with Toby, they passed by 3 older women sitting under a tree near a kiosk. "That's the boy," one of them whispered loudly, "the one whose grandma was sent away." The second woman added, "I heard she did something bad, but who knows the full story?" Daniel felt his chest tighten. Toby noticed. "Just ignore them," Toby said, pulling him along. "People always talk. They don't even know the truth." "But it hurts," Daniel whispered. "They talk like I did something wrong." Toby stopped and faced him. "Listen to me, Daniel. You did nothing wrong. You spoke up. You protected yourself. That takes real courage. Don't ever feel ashamed of that." Daniel nodded. He tried to smile, but his heart still felt heavy. At home, Mrs. Johnson was in the kitchen when Daniel walked in. "You're early today," she said with a smile. "Yeah," Daniel said, dropping his bag. She looked at him closely. "What's wrong?" He sat down on the stool near her. "People are talking." She stopped stirring her pot. "About Mama Grace?" Daniel nodded. She sighed. "I knew this would happen. That's why your father and I wanted to handle things quietly." "But people are making up stories," Daniel said. "They think I lied or did something bad." Mrs. Johnson walked over and sat beside him. "Daniel, you did the bravest thing a child can do. Telling the truth is not always easy, but it is always right. Let people say what they want. The people who matter, the ones who truly love you, they believe you. We believe you." Daniel rested his head on her shoulder. "Thanks, Mom." The next day was the school picnic. All the students arrived early, dressed in their neat uniforms, carrying lunch boxes and wide smiles. Teachers stood in line, counting heads and organizing buses. Daniel and Toby sat beside each other on the ride. They laughed, joked, and pointed out funny things on the road. When they reached the picnic spot, a wide green field with mango trees and a small playground, everyone ran off to play. But Daniel sat quietly on a rock under one of the trees. Toby walked over. "You okay?" Daniel nodded. "Just thinking." "What now?" Toby asked, sitting beside him. "Do you ever wonder if some things will follow us forever? Like, what if I grow up and people still talk about what happened?" Toby shrugged. "Maybe. But by then you'll be a doctor, right? You'll be too busy saving lives to care." Daniel chuckled. "That would be nice." Toby added, "And maybe one day you'll tell your story and help other kids speak up too." Daniel looked at his friend. "You think so?" "I know so." Back in town, word had spread. Some people whispered, some avoided the family. A few came and offered quiet support. One evening, Mr. Johnson came home from work, looking tired. "How was it today?" his wife asked. "Rough," he said, removing his shoes. "People are talking." She looked up from her sewing. "What else is new?" "They're saying we should have kept quiet, that Mama Grace is old and we've embarrassed the family." She stood up and walked over. "So what now? We regret protecting our son?" He looked at her firmly. "Never." Mrs. Johnson sighed. "Maybe it's time to stop hiding." "Hiding?" She nodded. "Maybe it's time to speak up, let people know the truth." He paused. "You mean share Daniel's story?" "Yes," she said. "Not for gossip, but so people understand, so other children will know they are not alone." A week later, the Johnsons were invited to a special community forum at the local youth center. The topic was protecting our children. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson were asked to speak. At first, they said no, but Daniel surprised them. "I want to speak," he said one night at dinner. They stared at him. "Are you sure?" his father asked. Daniel nodded. "I want people to hear it from me." On the day of the event, the hall was full. Parents, teachers, elders, and young people sat in rows waiting. When it was Daniel's turn, he walked up to the small stage. His legs shook a little. He took the mic. "My name is Daniel," he said, "and something happened to me, something no child should ever go through." The room was silent. "I was hurt, not by a stranger, but by someone I loved and trusted, my grandmother." Gasps filled the room. She said things that confused me. She touched me in ways that didn't feel right. She told me to keep it a secret. He paused, but I told my parents, and they believed me. They protected me. I'm standing here today because I spoke up." He looked around the room. "If something ever feels wrong, even if it's someone close, speak up. Tell someone you're not alone." He stepped back. The room erupted in applause. Some were crying, some stood up, all were touched. That day, Daniel became more than just a victim. He became a voice. Dear viewers, you followed Daniel's powerful journey, one filled with fear, truth, courage, and healing. Now, it's your turn to speak up. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in Daniel's place? Do you think the family made the right choice? Do you believe more kids need to hear stories like this? Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss what happens in the final chapter. Because trust me, Part 5 will shake you. And if this story touched you in any way, share it. Someone out there might need this more than you know. Let's protect our children. Let's spread truth. Let's never be silent again. Part 5. The final reveal. The family secret. No one expected. After Daniel spoke at the youth center, the whole town began to change. People who once whispered behind closed doors now came forward with open hearts. Some apologized, some cried. A few children even told their own stories for the first time. Daniel had become more than just a boy with a secret. He was now a voice for the voiceless. But what the world didn't know was, this story wasn't over, because there was one more secret, buried deep in the heart of Daniel's father. One evening, Mr. Johnson sat in the backyard alone, looking up at the moon. The wind was soft, the sky was full of stars, but inside him, a storm was growing. His wife joined him. She sat beside him in silence for a while. "Still thinking about it?" she asked softly. He nodded. "I've kept something locked inside for many years," he whispered. "Something I never told anyone, not even you." She turned toward him, listening. "When I was 14, something happened to my cousin, my uncle's daughter. She told me that Mama Grace touched her in a wrong way, too." Mrs. Johnson gasped. "What?" "I didn't believe her at first," he continued. "I thought she was lying. I even shouted at her, told her to never say such things about my mother." "What happened after that?" "She never spoke about it again, and our family sent her to live with distant relatives in another town." His wife was speechless. "I didn't protect her," he said, tears filling his eyes. "I failed her." "You were just a child," she whispered. "But now," he said, "my own son went through the same pain. And that makes me realize Mama Grace has been doing this for longer than we knew." The next morning, Mr. Johnson called a family meeting. His wife, Daniel, his younger brother, Uncle Amika, Aunt Miriam, a few cousins. Everyone sat around the living room. "I called you all here," he began, "because it's time we tell the truth." He looked at Daniel. "My son was hurt by our own mother." The room went silent. Aunt Miriam covered her mouth in shock. Uncle Amika shook his head slowly. "Are you sure?" Daniel stood up. He looked at everyone and said, "Yes, I'm sure." Then Mr. Johnson turned to face the family again. And it wasn't just him. Years ago, our cousin Ifeoma told me the same thing. I didn't believe her, but now I know. She was telling the truth. Tears rolled down Aunt Miriam's cheeks. "Oh God, I remember Ifeoma. She stopped talking to the whole family. She disappeared." Uncle Emeka stood up. "So what do we do now?" "We speak the truth," Mr. Johnson said. "We stop hiding," Daniel's mother added. "And we make sure no child in this family ever goes through this again." The family nodded. One by one, a chain of silence had finally been broken. Later that week, Daniel's story was shared in a community radio interview. His parents gave permission, And Daniel agreed. They didn't use his real name, but his voice reached thousands. A teacher from another village called in and said, "After hearing this story, 3 students in my school came forward with their own experiences." A nurse from the city said, "We need more families like this, brave, honest, protective." And slowly, the shame turned into strength. One Sunday, during church service, the pastor shared a message that made everyone sit up straight. "Sometimes the people we fear disappointing the most are the ones who need to be stopped," he said. "Silence protects the guilty, but truth protects the innocent." Daniel's mother held his hand in the pew. "That message was for us," she whispered. He smiled. "And for others like us too." Months later, Daniel stood in front of his school assembly as a student leader. He wore his clean uniform, polished shoes, and a confident smile. "My name is Daniel," he said boldly, "and I will never be afraid to speak the truth again." The students clapped. His teachers stood. The principal even wiped her eyes. And so the story ends, not with silence, not with fear, but with truth, healing, and hope. Daniel's family chose courage over comfort. They chose to protect the future rather than hide the past. Dear viewers, this may be the end of Daniel's story, but for someone out there, this might be the beginning of their freedom. If this story moved you, touched you, or opened your eyes, do one thing today. Comment below. Just one word, one thought, one feeling. It could change someone's life. Subscribe to the channel if you believe that stories like this need to be told. Real, raw, brave. And most of all, share this story with a parent, a teacher, a friend, a neighbor. You never know who's hiding pain behind a smile. Let's break the silence. Let's protect every child. Let's stand together. This is not just a story. This is a movement. Be part of it.